Zillow has started to dictate when you can put on the property, when you can't put on the property. Hey, if you market it over here, we're not going to show it over there. It's a little ridiculous that, like, when we got our licenses, we're not going to Seattle to Zillow's headquarters and saying, hey, please, Mr. or Mrs. Zillow, can we please have our licenses from you? Like, when did Zillow become the arbiter of what you can and can't do with properties? And so now here comes Compass, right? And now Compass is saying, hey, we're going to do it our way. We're going to play by Compass's rules. So Shawn, and of course NAR is just like twiddling their thumbs on the line, like,
okay.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt. That is Shawn, and welcome to our show. Shawn, in today's episode, we have some of the biggest real estate brokerage news ever. Compass is acquiring Anywhere, creating the world's largest brokerage. Shawn, Anywhere, of course, is the holding company for such brands like Century 21, Sotheby's, Corcoran, ERA, Better Homes and Garden, Coldwell Banker.
And the list goes on. These are huge companies.
I cannot understate the gravity of a merger and acquisition of this size. Shawn, Wednesday, September 24th. What were your first impressions when you heard that Compass was buying Anywhere?
I was like, is this even possible? Right? Like it was such big news.
Is it even like allowed possible?
Yeah. Well, then you start getting into the monopoly kind of thing, right?
Compass is like the number one brokerage, like hard stop. You can pull different stats. Like, they're the number one brokerage in terms of sales. And then number two is Anywhere. So this is, the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers, combining forces and creating a super team.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that's the thing is, like, I was looking at that and I'm like, is this, it's going to the monopoly territory, right? But there's a lot of realtors in the United States. I think you just said 1.5 million. And now under that umbrella of Compass and Anywhere, there's over 330,000 or something.
Yeah, so
like that.
Compass is going from 30,000 to over 340,000. Now, it's important to realize that everyone at Century 21 is not going to be it's not going to be at Compass now. Right. It's like the car companies, right? Just because GM owns this or someone owns GM, it's not everyone is now General Motors.
They're just owned by Compass. Everybody's keeping their branding of Century 21, Coldwell Banker, but they are now owned by Compass.
And now Compass is going to have like 18%, basically almost 20% of the market share in the United States.
It's insane. Do we want to get into like the benefit of that? One thing that they're talking about, and the one thing that Compass always strives for or pushes on their listing appointments and out there in the atmosphere is their coming soon listings, right? They're coming soon listings. They're always pushing this and pushing this. Well, what did they just do? They just upped their coming soon game by double. Like now all of these other companies are going to be able to share in this coming soon status prior to hitting the MLS, prior to hitting Zillow. They can now share in this. And so that's what they're going after. They want that share. And I think that's a huge step in the right direction for Compass. Is it in the right direction for everybody else? I don't know,
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a big thing to watch because as an outside agent, we're affiliated with Real Broker because, on the outside, you still have, the EXPs, the Real Brokers, the Fathom Realties, the Keller Williams. I'm sure I'm leaving, a couple large brokerages out. But we're all saying, hey, you guys kind of have a lot of exclusive listings. I'd love to be able to see those listings. And now there's going to be like 300,000 agents that I don't know how the platform is going to work, but now they're going to be able to see all these exclusive, if you want to call them pocket listings, because that's what they are. Hate it or love it, these agents are now going to have access, and these agents' clients are now going to have access to these properties. And that was the whole goal of Compass, is to have them, clients and customers start the search at compass.com and finish the search at compass.com when they're touting, hey, you go to our website and you can see 900 properties in San Francisco that aren't on the market. That to me is an incredible value add for the company.
It's a huge value add for the company. But I always go back to what is the goal of the seller, and you're working for the seller, and is your goal to get the highest price possible? That's typically 90% of the time, 95% of the time, that's the goal of most sellers. Is I want the best contract possible. I want the highest price possible. Is putting it out to 20% of the audience the way to go, or is it putting it out to 100% of the realtors out there and their clients to get you the highest price? And I think that's always been and always will be my push against that, is because it doesn't matter what coming soon kind of status you have. Yes, it's great for your buyer clients. It's great for your agents to tout that, but is it good for your seller clients? And I personally, I don't think so. And I think most people would argue against that, because most of the time, if it's funny, I went on a listing appointment the other day, and I want to bring this up just because, it doesn't matter the brokerage. It matters about the agent most of the time. It matters of who you're using. The brokerage really doesn't really dig into what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. We are general contractors. We can do pretty much what we want to, but we have to follow guidelines. But in my listing appointment, I was competing against, this is for a multi-million-dollar place, and I was competing against, some of the brokerages that you would typically think they're in that realm. And I said, listen, if you think that this brokerage is going to do you more, wouldn't you think that they would have then most of the buyer sales on that same thing, right? That brokerage is so good, they're going to sell my property. How would they sell it? They'd then sell it to somebody under their brokerage, right? Mm-hmm. That's why they would use them. Otherwise, you just use anybody. So I went through all the listings, and I said, do you know how many were sold by that company? Zero. So what does that tell you about the brokerage? It's just the name. You're going on the name, and stop going on the name. Go on the agent that's going to sell the property and what kind of job they're going to do for you. And that's what I want people to focus on. So,
well, there's kind of a two aspect that Compass kind of talks out of both sides of their mouth when it comes to this, private exclusive territory. And here's what I mean by that. In 2024, a Compass spokesperson said in 2024, 94% of homes pre-marketed in Compass private exclusive or Compass coming soon ended up on the MLS. So as if to say, hey, maybe they're touting the goal is like price discovery or momentum building, but part of the reason that they want to do this private exclusive business is to double on both sides of the deal, is to have the Compass buyer agent bring that buyer. But then they're kind of saying, well, listen, guys, 94% actually go on the MLS, so it's actually a benefit for the seller to do this. They still go on the MLS. To me, I don't know. It kind of comes at me from both sides. When you have 94% of the properties still make it on the MLS, but then we're still trying to encourage sellers to sell off market. Shawn, what are your thoughts on that kind of dichotomy? Because I don't know if I've comprehended a thought there or just regurgitated a quote.
Yeah, it's a good sales tactic by Compass. That's all it is. It's a tactic for them to use to get you to use Compass, right? Hey, we've got this huge database of properties that we are selling that we could sell off market. And as a buyer client, or as a buyer client, it is where I think it would benefit. But as a seller client, I don't think it's going to benefit you.
Okay, so they're basically saying as a buyer, hey, come see all these properties that will end up on the MLS anyways, right? Because it's like 94% are going to come on the MLS. So it means 94% are not going to sell off market. So they're telling the buyer clients, hey, come see these properties that only we have. By the way, only 6% are actually going to sell.
Yeah. That's a real low amount. Something? No, that's exactly it. So it's not really working.
But what is working? Yeah. Because maybe for the seller, working is like, oh crap, we were going to price this $50,000 too high, and now we're at a better price. Or oh crap, we're going to price it $50,000 too low. We got all these offers. We need to increase the price and go on.
That's where it's a great tool. I have to agree.
I don't know if this is the measuring stick. Oh, 6% sell off market, 94% don't sell off market. It's just so funny when you see the Instagram stories from Compass agents. Oh, sold another one off market. Oh, my buyer got another one off market. It'll be like consecutive stories where, a listing agent for Compass is saying, oh, we just sold one off market. And then the next one's a buyer's agent. Oh, we just got one off market. Who's getting the better deal? One of those people is like drastically overpaying, underpaying, underselling, or overselling.
Yeah. And are you doing your fiduciary duty to your client? That's the question. And so,
because not every client wants 100 people through the open house and multiple offers. I think every seller has a number. Mm-hmm. And if you can hit that number in Compass private exclusive, and I guess you're part of the 6%, go for it.
Yeah. I just sold one off market, but it was an agent from a different company, and we had been keeping in contact for months. And I got a great price for it. My clients were happy, and it never hit the market. So you can definitely do that. There's advantages of that. And, I think where it comes down to is who's doing the most business in certain areas. You contact those agents. Hey, what do you got coming up? We do that all the time. Like contact our friends and be like, hey, do you have anything coming up here? Do you have anything coming up there? And that gives you kind of an upper leg to know when it's coming on, or maybe you can get in before it actually hits coming soon on the MLS and get it under contract. But I think it's a great tool. I think it's a great marketing scheme for them, or a marketing tool for them to try to get listings. But is it in the end the best thing ever to tout? No, I think that most people aren't going to sell it like it says. 94% aren't actually going to sell on there anyways. But it's a good tool.
Well, you have to imagine there's now going to be Century 21 alternatives if there aren't already. Coldwell Banker alternatives if there aren't already. I'm sure there are. But Shawn, it brings me to this. Right now, every real estate agent is pretty much beholden to a couple different firms and companies, and that is NAR, right? We're all playing by NAR's rules, National Association of Realtors, and Zillow. You know, Zillow has started to dictate when you can put on the property, when you can't put on the property. Hey, if you market it over here, we're not going to show it over there. It's a little ridiculous that, like, when we got our licenses, we're not going to Seattle to Zillow's headquarters and saying, hey, please, Mr. or Mrs. Zillow, can we please have our licenses from you? Like, when did Zillow become the arbiter of what you can and can't do with properties? And so now here comes Compass, right? And now Compass is saying, hey, we're going to do it our way. We're going to play by Compass's rules. So Shawn, and of course NAR is just like twiddling their thumbs on the line, like,
okay,
oh wait, maybe we should have an app.
Hopefully we don't get sued.
Yeah. So I mean, Shawn, you have been a big proponent of disliking Zillow. There's a lot of agents that feel the same way. Hey, they're taking our data, they're selling it back to us. This is absurd. I would say you're right. I would say a lot of people at Compass would agree with you, and a lot of people at Compass would say, hey, Shawn, we're doing the exact thing that you hate about Zillow. We're just making it better and more streamlined for the customer. So this could be an opportunity where Zillow is, I don't want to say no longer a factor, but Zillow is no longer the number one place to look for a house.
100%. And this is where I'm excited for this. Honestly, I don't like Zillow. I've never been a huge fan. I love the website. I don't like the tactics they use. I don't like the non-disclosure that they're getting sued for now. And I said this years ago.
Yeah.
I said it years ago. There's no disclosure. These people don't know how the money's working on the back end. You know, these agents are paying thousands and thousands of dollars for these leads, whether they're paying a monthly subscription or they're paying per deal. They're paying so much. And so the argument was Zillow was actually keeping commissions high because, you know, Zillow's getting 40% of the deal, right? And so people didn't know that. And that's a huge disclosure that should have been signed when you're doing. And not only that, the disclosure of who is the listing agent, who is calling me. You know, there's a difference in people. It's just agents calling buyers and hounding them, trying to get their business.
Just real quick, the lawsuit filed on Friday in Zillow that Shawn's referencing claims Zillow is misleading prospective buyers into contacting agents working with Zillow and not the agent who listed the home for sale, which would artificially, inflate the cost of the transaction and inflate real estate prices.
100%. I said that a long time ago, and that's where I was like, why is this happening? So Zillow grew and grew and grew, and it grew into this animal that everybody uses. And, you know, then they became a brokerage, which I don't even know if they're still in brokerage model, but they have to be to get these listings that they're listing. I think this is good. I would rather compete against a fellow real estate agent to try to get a listing than Zillow. I think Zillow is, I don't know. I mean, like, I was never a fan of it. I think the real estate agents, I know how the inner workings of real estate happen. We're all trying to make a living, and I think that I can compete on that level, but I can't compete against Zillow and getting these leads and basically, you know, undercutting people and, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think my counter to that would be, okay, so what if there's a world where the consumer goes to Compass first? I mean, Compass has almost 20% market share. They have 340,000 agents, and, you know, maybe we're posting listings on Compass, or consumers are going to Compass first to view properties, and you're doing an interview for a listing, and you're saying, hey, I'm Shawn Battle with XYZ Realty. Your listing is going to be on Compass. Why wouldn't they just go with a Compass agent?
Because I have the expertise in the area, because I'm the better agent than their Compass agents. I'm just saying, like, these are I have a better marketing plan. I have a better sales in the area. My days on market are lower than anybody else's. You know, these are the things that we have to tout to say, you know, call this person here that I just sold their property, and you'll get a good, warm, fuzzy feeling of why they used me and what the result was. That's why people use it. And that's why I'm saying is, like, it's the agent. The agent is who you're hiring, not the company. And keep that in mind when you're going to, I'm sure I'm going to get comments on here like, well, you're talking about my agency is the greatest. Okay, what do they do for you? They don't do much for you. When I've been in this 21 years, I've worked for Century 21 for years. There's a time where they do a lot for you to grow as an agent. Yeah, they do have some tools that you might use, some databases that you might use. But in the end, it's you, your personality, your willingness to work. How hard are you going to work? What is your marketing plan? Because every agent in that company has a different marketing plan. Every agent in that company has a different way that they're going to do a listing presentation. I, for sure, never used my company stuff. I always did my own, right? And so that's what I want people to understand is that we are, independent agents. Yes, we do work for a company under an umbrella. Yes, there are commission splits that we have to pay to that company. And there are deals made in the background all the time. And so use the agent you feel comfortable with. That's it.
You can have the shiniest platform and the nicest software, but if your agent has no idea what they're doing, you're not going to get the results that you want. CEO of Compass, Robert Revkin, which, by the way, I mean, a couple of years ago, Compass was struggling, right?
Yeah.
They just weren't, producing
Stock
the way they
price was down. Like
stock price was
"Ooh."
down. What's interesting is that they haven't really grown organically, right? It's all been through acquisition. So the Compass organic growth isn't really there. At the same time, I don't know if it matters. Like if you just have unlimited pockets, all right, who cares about organic growth?
Yeah.
Just buy everyone. But Robert Revkin has 4 pillars of the stated goals and potential benefits. Number 1, premier residential platform, so the Compass app. Number 2, ancillary services and revenue diversification. So think title, mortgage, escrow, closing, all those
Big
fun
circle.
things. Number 3, significant free cash flow. Okay, so if you dive into the weeds, the sale is what, 1.6 billion in all stock for Anywhere. That's the purchase price. It could turn into like a $10 billion valuation for Compass, but Compass is also inheriting over $2 billion worth of debt for Anywhere. And so significant free cash flow means basically one of Revkin's goals is to use, quote unquote, leftover money to pay down the debt as quickly as possible. And then number 4 is end-to-end consumer experience. This to me is the biggest one. The consumer is ultimately going to decide who wins at the end of the day. To me, Shawn, here's what I want. You order from Domino's, you order from Papa John's, you go on like the Domino's app, which by the way, I don't have, but like I've seen it out there. And it just shows you where your pizza is, along the way. Okay, it's about to be in the oven. Okay, it's in the oven. Okay, the toppings are going on. Okay, maybe the toppings go on before you put it in the oven. And then, okay, now it's on the way. I'm sure there's an app out there. I'm sure there's a service out there that has the same thing for the home buying experience. But wouldn't it be nice for our clients to go in and say, oh, okay, the appraisal is scheduled for, next week. Okay, the loan is almost done. Okay, the inspection, we're negotiating that. And yeah, we can do that through emails. But having like an end-to-end consumer experience where the seller signs into the app, the agent signs into the app, and everything goes smoothly. Everyone knows what everything is at in each stage. That to me would be very beneficial. I think Compass may have something similar to that.
That's genius. Yeah. I mean, that's a great thing. Actually, let's talk about that more. Let's talk about our company and if we talk to the owner of our company, he will probably put that into.
I'm sure I didn't just create this idea. Yeah. I'm sure
I've never
been
thought
said like a million times.
Yeah, I mean, it's out there.
We have our transaction coordinator who's going to email you every step of the way, and that's nice. But it's the difference of like, okay, go on the desktop, website URL versus like a handy dandy app that is like much more user friendly.
Yeah. So you're going to use Domino's for the app, right? But do you like their pizza? Right. And that's the thing is you want to diversify on your pizza. For me, I'm going to Colony House right in Clarendon. Yeah. And I'm getting that stuff because that's good pizza and I don't care about the app. Right. And that's the difference between a brokerage and an agent. Right. You want the good flavor. You got to go to a different agent, so that's the difference. And that's the analogy. Right. I mean, that's Compass with the great app. Or do you want Colony House with the great pizza? So,
yeah. No, that's fair. Number 1, brokerage. Number 2, brokerage. Do we think there's a chance that the DOJ, do we think the DOJ likes real estate agents?
No, God, no.
Yeah. Or the FTC, I don't know if that's more like TV, but like, is there going to be a governing body who looks at the number 1 and number 2 brokerage and say, you know what? I don't know if I like all of these conglomerates joining forces.
They are already looking, Matt. They are already looking. It's called a monopoly. And once you get too big, they break you up. I think maybe by keeping the old names, by keeping the old branding, they're kind of maybe skirting that, right? So they're still gonna. I'm believing so, and that's what I read, that Century 21 is still staying Century 21, but they're under the Compass.
I mean, there's
umbrella.
zero chance that Century 21 is going to change their name. To
Right,
Compass.
exactly.
Zero
Right.
chance.
Exactly. So they're keeping all those brands. So that's where you can understand that maybe it's not a monopoly, but Compass owns it, right? But as Compass keeps buying up and buying up, the DOJ is going to say, the government's going to say, hold on, you're getting too big for your britches. You can't be a 51% of all real estate agents. You then have a monopoly, and we're going to cut you up. So they have to be careful on that. I would think that I'm no expert on that side of things, but that's the way I've seen it. But you know what? There's a lot of great alternatives out there. And, we work for a company called Real Broker, and Real Broker was the fastest growing company over the last 2 years. I mean, we have gone from when we joined the company of 8,000 agents to over 25,000 agents in a year and a half to 2 years. So it was a really quick grow, and there was a reason for that growth. I won't go into the details of it, but we're different than Compass, and our agents are freer to do things, but we've got great technology too. And our technology rivals some of these other, believe me, I've worked at the other ones, and some of them were antiquated, where this one is built from the ground up, which is great.
It is interesting because, all right, so we were at Century 21. I don't think anyone thought of Century 21 as the most tech forward brokerage out there, but people think that of Compass. Whether that's true or not is up for debate. But it is interesting how it's like the antithesis of the two brokerages that are forming. I wonder if there's going to be a little bit of friction there, because a lot of agents like working at Century 21, like working at Coldwell Banker, like working at Sotheby's, because it's not Compass.
Yeah,
because they're not affiliated with Compass.
That's exactly. I was thinking, are people going to start leaving these companies because of this? We've been against them for a long time, and it happens. And I guarantee you there would be people leaving these brokerages because they're now owned by Compass. That was their arch enemy for a long time in the business, and now they're owned by it. So you could see why people get angry about it.
Well, there's probably a pretty big opportunity for the neighborhood boutique brokerages, kind of the local kind of people that are in the trenches every single day, as opposed to the New York City-based kind of bigger brokerages out there. I mean, who wants to be, affiliated with the biggest brokerage in the United States? Obviously, that's a benefit compared to, hey, they may be the biggest brokerage. I'm the biggest agent in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
You want to sell in New York City? Fine. You want to sell in Ashton Heights, in Westover? All right, there's like a new sheriff in town.
Yeah, and that's my point too. When I go into a listing appointment, how many times do I mention the company I'm with? Like very little, to be honest. It's not part of my presentation. Presentation is who I am and what we've done as a team, and we push that. And it's the agent. I never even have to mention who I work with. And then when I go over the listing agreement, I'm like, Real Broker is who I work for, and they're like, cool. It's the agent. What are they doing for you? And there's agents out there that lean so much on their brokerage name, so much. And now they're crippled to it. They're tied to that so hard because they have no other way of thinking of their value. Their value is tied to a brokerage, not to their actual duties that they're doing for their clients.
Does the client care about the brokerage?
Some do.
I think there's a 5. It's a not insignificant number. Maybe call it 5 to 20%. Because you go in the higher price brackets and you only see the same brokerage names. I would have to think that if those agents switch to another brokerage, they'd probably still hire them. But I've also come across people who say, I only am going to hire someone from this brokerage. Doesn't matter. And the agent they hire is like, all right, well, you got the brokerage you wanted.
That's it. Exactly.
So it does matter a tiny bit.
It does in the name recognition for some high dollar clients. I get it. These high end people want to use that certain brokerages, and we try to get around that by creating a luxury line or whatever. But there are people that are brainwashed into that, right? They're always going to have, no, I have to have a Lamborghini. No, I have to have this.
You really going to call it brainwashed?
Not brainwashed, but you know what I mean?
There's some things where I'm like, I got to buy my suits from Suit Supply. Yeah. Am I brainwashed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because you like their quality or whatever.
Oh.
So, but you also know that they do really good suits, right? And so the really good suits are the really good listings, right? The really good listings are owned by a certain company because they do most of the high-end stuff. So most of those high-end people say, no, I'm going to use this because all my high-end friends have used them. Not because of the job they did maybe, but because it's a status thing, right? Mm-hmm. It becomes status at certain points. And that's something that you can be pulled or pushed away from. And we'll see how it all goes. Like I said, I went onto a listing appointment. I did not get the listing, and I knew I wasn't going to, but I still put up a fight because I was going against somebody that saw the status. And that's the way it goes sometimes. And I'm fine with that. And, if it doesn't sell, I could be the second agent,
There you
That's
go.
the way you look at it.
What, firstborn, second wife, third agent.
Yeah,
There
you
you
go.
So, Shawn, as we're wrapping up here, what are your closing thoughts and takeaways? Think like the next 6 to 12 months in terms of maybe regulatory challenges, agents moving from one brokerage to another, and most importantly, clients like the regular Joe Schmo, Johnny Arlington, buyers and sellers. What should they be on the lookout for the next 6 to 12 months?
Number one, agents. I don't know that we're going to see. I think as agents get seasoned and start knowing their business and don't rely on the name, they're going to go more towards the real brokerage, like our company. That's why we went there. We can earn more money at these places. Some of these other companies, they're charging so much per transaction or per anything.
Well, it's the overhead. You have a lot of the traditional brokerages under Anywhere versus Compass. All right, so Compass still has brick and mortar offices, but they tout their tech, whereas a lot of the Coldwell Banker, Corcoran, Century 21, these are all traditional brick and mortar stores where that's kind of going by the wayside.
Yeah, and you think, and one of the reasons I left Century 21, and I love those guys, right? Like they're still my good friends. But in my mind, I'm like, all right, if I just go over to this brokerage, I don't think many people are going to care that I go over there as far as my past clients or clients. They won't even know. But I'll make more money. And that was the key. I was like, life is short. I want a beach house. And, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to earn more money. And wouldn't you do that for any job? You would say, well, I'll go to this company because I can earn more money. Well, that's what we did. And now I have a beach house, right? Like that's the key is like you have goals to set. You're going to work your butt off no matter where you are. If you have that work ethic, doesn't matter what business you're on, but you've got to look at the money intake and outtake. And, some of these bigger companies, they're like, no, you're paying this because we have overhead, because we just bought something for $1.6 billion. We got to pay these bills, right? So these agents typically are going to pay a little bit more than, say the real brokers, EXPs of the world. As far as a consumer, I don't think there's going to be much change as of right now. Most people won't even realize it. The Century 21 agents are still going to go on and do their Century 21 presentation. They're going to add a little bit of the Compass flair to it. Same thing with Coldwell Banker and all these guys. Now Compass is going to be touting a little bit harder on, hey, look how much market share we have on real estate in the United States. So that's going to be one of their things that they're going to be pushing on listing presentations and buyer presentations. But don't always be sucked into that. Just know what you're getting into and do research before you do it. And then regulatory things, I think the government's going to be watching out because I think Compass is on a tear right now, and I think they're going to keep buying. And that's how they're going to beat Zillow. Their goal is to beat Zillow, which I'm all for. I would definitely back the real estate agents rather than the tech platforms. So I hope that in some ways they succeed in this or bring Zillow to its point where it has to disclose a lot better to what's actually happening, who's getting these leads, who the listing agent is, and what percentage is going to Zillow from the commission. But overall, it was big news. It's huge news. These are huge, huge companies. But in the end, I don't think it's going to change the way that we do business. I don't think it's going to change how much business we get because it matters who is putting their foot and doing most of the listings in the areas that you're wanting to be in. And, we have chosen Arlington as our main hub, and that's kind of where we do most of our business. But, we do it everywhere, but we know the markets. And it's important that an agent that you're hiring knows the markets, knows the trends of the markets, knows what the market's doing right now on the buy side and the sell side, and how to explain these things to you. And that's what you want to go by.
It's going to be fascinating to watch over the next 6 to 12 months. I know I'm going to be very curious about more private exclusives, both with Compass and these other brokerages. I'm going to be looking at, hey, a lot of agents have changed brokerages in the past 2 years to kind of like avoid Compass, and now they can't avoid them anymore because they're part of the Compass umbrella. So if you're being forced to work for Compass at the end of the day, is that agent now going to jump ship? Now, how does that impact the end consumer? I mean, not much, but if you're now with a certain company and your agent's with a certain company and you have access to all these off-market properties, that's going to be a pretty big, again, value add for some of these people. And then, yeah, I mean, in terms of regulatory stuff, I think that the DOJ has the real estate industry in its crosshairs. So I don't think this is just a one and done, finalized, 100% done deal. I think the Department of Justice is going to take a big look at this. And, we're on the heels of, I would say, like a slowy market in Arlington. We've had 6 straight months of condo inventory over 200 units on the market, which hasn't happened in over 3 years. We're now over 500 active and coming soon properties in Arlington County, which again hasn't happened in many years. And I mean, most people are saying that the spring market is gonna be gangbusters next spring. But people said that about last spring, and it wasn't really
Say
that.
it every spring.
It wasn't really that gangbuster.
Spring is spring. It happens every year.
Gangbusters for like a month and a half.
Yeah, it was a slow start to the spring, and then I got super busy, but I'm mostly listing based this year. But thankfully, those all sold. But there is definitely a decline in the activity that we're seeing right now. I just put on a listing, and it's been slow. And I've got more coming up, and I'm hoping that the fall market stays alive. But we're typically slower in the fall, and we know that every year. I think this is a little bit slower than normal. And like you said, we have over 500 coming soon and active listings in Arlington County, and that's a lot for us. That's a lot. So you have to make your listings look good. You have to price them right for the season, not for the last comps you saw that's sold in the spring. Maybe you have to pull down a little bit off of that. But we're relying on the interest rates. And, we did see them come down over the last month and then kind of creep up again a little bit after the announcements that they did drop the price or drop the interest rate, but, maybe not enough that people wanted. I don't know. So interest rates is going to be a big game changer if we do start seeing more and more cuts in those interest rates. And if it happens to then culminate right at the spring market, it will be a gangbuster spring market for sure.
Certainly big news to follow and to continue watching. Be sure you are subscribed to the Shawn and Matt Show so you never miss an episode. Drop a comment down below to let us know your thoughts. And for Shawn and myself, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care.